The British East India Company (AIC) and the Dutch East India Company (VOC) were two of the most powerful European trading companies in the 17th and 18th centuries. Both companies were interested in controlling the lucrative spice trade in India, and this led to a number of conflicts between the two companies. One of the most notable battles between the British East India Company and the Dutch East India Company took place in 1652 at Swali, on the west coast of India. The Dutch fleet was much larger than the British fleet, but the British were able to defeat the Dutch through a combination of superior tactics and good luck. The victory at Swali gave the British East India Company a significant advantage in the spice trade, and it helped to establish the company as a major power in India. The British East India Company also received support from some indigenous Indian rulers in its conflicts with the Dutch East India Company. For example, the Maratha ruler Shivaji Maharaj allied himself with the British East India Company against the Dutch in the 1670s. Shivaji saw the British East India Company as a lesser evil than the Dutch, and he believed that the British would be less likely to interfere in his internal affairs. Another example of Indian support for the British East India Company against the Dutch East India Company can be seen in the Battle of Colachel, which took place in 1741. The Dutch had been trying to expand their influence in southern India, and they had come into conflict with the Travancore kingdom. The Travancore king, Anizam Tirunal Mathanda Varma, requested help from the British East India Company, and the British sent a fleet to assist him. The British and Travancore forces were able to defeat the Dutch, and this victory helped to secure the British position in southern India. Overall, the British East India Company was able to defeat the Dutch East India Company in India due to a combination of factors, including superior tactics, good luck, and the support of some indigenous Indian rulers. The defeat of the Dutch East India Company helped to establish the British East India Company as the dominant European power in India. It is important to note that the relationship between the British East India Company and the indigenous Indian population was complex and often contradictory. While some indigenous Indian rulers did support the British East India Company against the Dutch East India Company, many others were opposed to the British presence in India. The British East India Company's economic policies and cultural imperialism led to a great deal of resentment and anger among the Indian people. This resentment eventually erupted in the Indian Rebellion of 1857, which marked the beginning of the end of British rule in India.